example, from your profile that I saw, you're not pigeonholed in a single religion. Or correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you grab what you like from various things that you want to, learn more about or believe in. Would that be an accurate assessment, or delve into that if you might?
Hang on. Oh yeah, okay. Pros for just 1 second. We're good. Yeah, absolutely. So the whole like culmination of how this has come to be for me, like anything to do with like those terms, God, Christ consciousness, like spirituality in general, has been a huge evolution for me. Because like starting from day one, household upbringing, childhood upbringing was as like a joke, and I call it like a heathen household. Like it was like as anti-religious as it could be. I was like a hardcore, super rude atheist as a teenager. Like I would just like brash like as hell tell people like, oh, you're stupid if you believe in that. Like I was just very black and white, narrow-minded about the whole thing. And then in my early adult, like 19 to like 22, I had a handful of experiences that I consider like spiritual awakening were very difficult, that kind of forced me or inspired me or something to look for something more than what I had been comfortable with, that what I can see, touch, taste, like I felt so much loss that I had never felt before, that I was willing to like believe in something that I couldn't see if it helped me through that grieving process or through that like understanding of what the fuck, like how I wanted to deepen my understanding of things. And then as time has gone on, it's led me into, I joke with my friends, I'm like, how like taboo my past is. And it's like, as time goes on, people have all these assumptions. Like I worked in a strip club for 3 years, a long time ago. For the record, I do not condone the sex industry in any fashion at all. So that's just, disclaimer. But in the past, when I was in that industry, before I, had my awakening and healed my way out of it, people know that about me, or they learn that, and then they have assumptions. They're like, oh, well, then you must be fine being naked in front of anybody or whatever. Yeah. They think that it means that I have a certain attitude towards sex or life or whatever. But as time goes on, I feel like more and more in the opposite direction. I'm like turning into a Puritan kind of, where like my connection with spirit, with God, with creation, whatever you want to call it, and my personal interest in learning about how those like ineffable, like impossible to actually comprehend things have been manipulated and used and abused for different reasons. Maybe the intention was pure to begin with, but like for control or power or money or whatever, through all these different forms of controlled and organized religions, like my interest in all of it has grown so much. And it's because my relationship with that, like the raw essence of what God is so important to my life, and it's only gotten more and more important. And so naturally, wanting myself to be able to communicate all of that wisdom or benefit or whatever, I have personally felt interested to learn about like the ways that most people are often introduced to God in their lives, because I see the distortion in it, and so it's not about like, oh, Catholicism is bad or being a Mormon is wrong. Like it's not about that. But it's like I am very passionate about helping people connect with the truth from their own truth versus like through something that they were given externally and then now they believe.
Yeah, because to me the difficult thing was always growing up. Like I said, I was also similar, probably not as hardcore, but I was also like anti-religion, I guess you would say. And the thing that always got to me was that you're putting all your eggs in a basket, as far as being right or being this religion being the right one, but you were just born into it. So so if your parents, like for example, I have plenty of friends that their parents were Christians, and then when they were born, they were Catholics. So like if you would have been born 3 years later or earlier, you would have been a Christian. So that would have been your whole truth. It would have been based on whatever church your parents went to. And that's something I always kind of found difficult. But obviously religion, it's about the connection that one has with God. You know, the structure and the facilitation that happens through a certain religion, you know, that obviously there's community there. That's, you know, that's community. It's a beautiful thing. But I think sometimes people get pigeonholed into, this is my tribe, you know, whatever religion, etc. This is my tribe, and we're right, and they're wrong over there. And I think that's where I, as a teenager, always saw the bad part in religion. I guess now I'm more mature about it, but that's something that from years, like for example, I saw like you're mentioning God, and you're also mentioning being into Buddhism and upon other things too, which is cool. I think that's the way it should be. You should look, into different avenues to explore one's spirituality.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like, not now, because my understanding of things feels so like anchored into my being and who I am. But maybe four-ish years ago, like closer to the beginning of what I really consider my awakening, I was just in a deep exploration phase. I mean, I still am and always will be, probably. But it's like, I'm really getting clarity.
We're always learning. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have anything that felt very solid in my belief system. I just had ideas and like nothing that I could like articulate with confidence. And so I was always looking for things, and I'd have ahas and breakthroughs and whatever. And I had this recurring thought of like, why doesn't something exist like this? Like, why is there not like a church for this kind of thing? Like, this, now in hindsight, I can recognize it, which maybe was the seed of all religion, a desire for community, like you said, a desire for the ability to connect with other human beings who are, sharing this connection with something bigger. And so I think the intention with just that is great. Every time I came to the same conclusion when I thought it through hard enough, and now it's just like a duh kind of statement to me, that anytime ever that the essence of life, God, creation, universe, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is tried to put into something measurable like a church, it is automatically distorted, period. Doesn't matter how pure the intention is, because it's something that cannot be harnessed, cannot truly be perceived. It can just be known and built a relationship with and trusted. That's the whole idea of faith, because if it was something you could really wrap your head around, you wouldn't need much faith, And so it's like anytime it's tried to be made structured or organized in any fashion, I think it gets diluted and distorted and something that is no longer the true essence of God. And so, yeah.
Well, I mean, humans are corruptible. So, like, it sucks because sometimes, too, it's a bad experience that someone has with a certain, figure in the church, and, that makes them turn away from religion altogether. Like, people have traumatic stories, but I have a more funny story. Obviously, it's not, in the moment, it wasn't funny. But one of someone close to me, one of my cousins, actually, what made him leave the church was because the priest basically called him an idiot, which isn't cool. Isn't cool to call a kid an idiot, but I mean, priests have done worse things to kids, so I think he got off lucky. So he called him an idiot. He called him an idiot. He reprimanded him. It was like a Catholic school, like Sunday school, and because of that, my cousin never went back to church. He said, "Man, that guy was like an asshole." And I get it. When you're a kid, people hurt your feelings or whatever. But that's a mild example of how people can lose their faith, or because a certain figure at that church, a person of status, at that church, was an asshole or was worse than that, did something to them. And that's where I see that it's pretty fallible when it comes to religion. And I think that's the tricky part of navigating it. But I really like the way you're going with it. I really like that. And it's awesome because like you said, you're going towards a Puritan route, but you said it in a jokingly way. But it is funny because there are certain religions that wouldn't let you have like the image of Buddha in your house, or Tibetan philosophy relics or anything like that, because that would be seen as sacrilege. So do you see like a difference in that? Like, as far as your circle goes, I would imagine, it's similar to your beliefs, but do you see a difference with our generation? Like, as far as like not being so with religion, not being so, downtrodden to like not explore different things? I mean, I kind of see it, but I was kind of wondering your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, just from the most general, like, assessment of our generation and younger ones coming, it's like we have so much more access to everything, and so it's like, in general, that, I guess it's arguable, makes us less controllable or more controllable. But if we can, pick the less controllable perspective, then it's like, if a kid has Google, starting at 6 years old or whatever it is, in most households, then they're going to be more opportunistic, I would guess, around asking the questions they have. Because like every client I've ever worked with, and many of my clients are like middle-aged, 50s-ish, like 40s, 50s. Those are like, they're my favorite people to work with. Because at that point in time, they're like, okay, I'm done fucking around. Like, I'm ready to change. And so I like working with those people. But a lot of them have had very strict upbringings of different sorts. Catholic, Mormon, Christian for sure. Just different upbringings that were more rigid. And they can tell me when we go through different childhood things and we're working on their healing from the past, they tell me all at some point that at this point or that point, they questioned XYZ, and then somehow that was like muffled or put away in a corner or like not allowed, or they just put it in the back of their mind themselves because of something they witnessed or whatever, and now I feel like the natural curiosity that will arise in children being told something is true. And then they're like, but why? Kids, natural questioning is something that has a lot more space now in our generation and coming generations than it ever has. And so I imagine there's a lot more diversity to come and a lot more critical thinking, hopefully, because people have access to it.
Yeah, like obviously you're always gonna have your pockets of people who are, born into it, hardcore, whatever it may be, Muslim, Christian, whatever. But obviously you have pockets of that. But like, I agree with you. I think for the majority of people of our generation, I'm lumping myself in there with you because I think I'm might older than you, but I'm still trying to cling on to the generation, right? But yeah, I think it's something there. There's something there with that, and I've seen it with people close to me. People close to me, they've had awakening moments where they become Christian or Catholic, and it's a bit intense at first. They become very not the same person they were. Not laughing as much at improper or dirty jokes, kind of just like a little chuckle. But then after a while, I feel like they kind of mellow out, and they be like, "It's okay. I can still have my faith and still, kick the shit." And I feel like that's kind of what happens. I see with a lot of people. They'll go to church, and good for them, but then they'll feel like they have to be very, almost like the parent in the room, right? Like they have to be the parent. But then after a while, they kind of mellow out, and it's like it's a bit more like not as much as before, like the person I knew before, but closer to that than before.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you. I even have a specific memory. So when my parents split up when I was like 5 years old, I don't remember what the story was. I was too young. But at some point, in an effort to like save the marriage, my mom wanted us to be Mormon, and so we were Mormon when I was a little kid for like 6 months or something. Went to church, and then didn't at some point. And when I was maybe 11, 12, I had moved. I was living with my dad alone and with my sister, but he was single parent. We moved to a new house and found out that one of the neighbors was a person from the Mormon church where we had gone like 5 or 6 years ago for a short amount of time.
Okay.
And so she was like, "Oh, you girls are here, like great, like do you want to come to church with me?" And so she started inviting my sister and I to go with her, and I went with her for maybe like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And even at that age, I was conscious of how over that short amount of time, hearing my dad, who cusses a lot, like it started to feel like a negative impact on me. Just hearing the word fuck or hearing him say something like cringe inside because I was internalizing a certain narrative. And even just that short amount of time that it was bad, this idea of something right versus wrong. And I think that is why spirituality in general, and why I'm so open to different, like picking and pulling different pieces of different traditions, has drawn me more than any other structured, organized religion, because the undertone of all religions that I see as harmful is that it teaches God and the relationship with God as a hierarchical thing, where it's not God is within you and outside of you and is everything. It's like God is here and he's in you too, made in his image, but only if you behave yourself.
And it puts gatekeepers there the figures of the church or the establishment, they're the gatekeepers, you know. So yeah, and when they have power, that power corrupts, absolutely, and that's what happens.
And it even trains your inner voice to become a gatekeeper for yourself. Well, then it's like you're judging yourself or others around you as right or wrong. Internalize, like, good means you get something good, and bad means you get something bad, and like it's just not true.
Yeah, and then you have that. I mean, as a Mexican Native American, you have that Catholic guilt, obviously because of Spanish and all that, and you know, ancient times, Catholicism, Mexico. But you have that internalized Catholic guilt. But I wanted to ask you about growing up being a Mormon. Do you remember, like, actively when your mom's friend invited you? How old were you then?
So I went for about 6 months when I was like 5-ish, maybe 6. And then I went for about a month or 2 max when I was like 12.
Okay, when you're like 12. Do you remember a lot from it, or in general? Because I have no experience with Mormon things. I
remember certain things. Yeah, like I remember that the dress code is incredibly strict. I remember that. And me, like, this has been a thing my whole life. It just happens to be very compatible with my hippie life now. But even as a young child, I like hated clothes, hated them. Like, just the feeling of it feels restrictive. Like, I just don't like clothes for the most part. And like little girls, you have to wear your nylons, you have to wear a certain type of shoes, you have to wear the dress, you have to, like, it's like robotic feeling. Kind of feels like you walk into a time machine. Where it's dressed the same, and it's all like. And so just things like that, just kind of like the essence of that spills out into everything, how everything is done. There's nothing that feels casual. It's all very rigid and orderly, and it's a 3-hour-long service. It's dense. Like, it's very serious and dense. And so that's what I remember, being very bored. And like, it's not engaging for kids. So for children, at least, I don't know how it goes as an adult, but for kids, it's an hour in this like shared service space, sermon, whatever they call it. And then an hour of all the kids together, and then an hour of kids separated into their own age groups. So 2 hours is like kids doing just kid things. And even during that, with like snacks and songs and all those other kid friendly things, it's not fun. Like, it's very much, it feels like school more than anything else, where it's like the vibe is clear that you're there to learn something and like learn well. You know, there's an expectation for you to learn it well. And I just remember that, and feeling, even at that age, 5, 6 years old, feeling like a little bit of like shame or embarrassment that I didn't know the Bible stories and all the other kids knew, and things like that. So very much a performance feeling thing.
Performance, that's a good word for it. The gist I get with a lot of religions, the ones that I've experienced or have secondhand experience with, is that it's almost like you go in already down so many points, and you have to redeem yourself. I've never seen a church where you go in and it's like, bro, you're the best and you're up there. It's all about knocking you down a couple pegs, and you have to redeem yourself. You have to prove yourself worthy of the God of this religion. And that's something that I've always felt, you know. It's like, and people have different approaches to it, because my experience, I've never experienced Mormons, but I've experienced Jehovah's Witness churches. And just like any other 14-year-old in my city, the reason that we end up in Jehovah's Witness church is because we're trying to get with a girl. Like, there's a girl we met at school. There's some girl we met at school, and she's like, "Oh, come to church with me." You're like, "All right." And it's funny because, like, you show up and you stand out immediately, because they wear suits. Everyone wears suits and ties, and there's every now and then there's this guy that come in with a dress shirt or something semi-casual, but not a suit. And that those guys are here because they're trying to talk to some girl. But the people, they allow it. They allow it because they're hoping that you're gonna come and you're gonna like what you see and enjoy the community, and you're gonna stay. And it happens. But so that's one experience with like stringent, like uptight religions, is Jehovah's Witness. Is that similar to Mormons, like as far as the strict nature of it, or would you say?
I don't have very much personal experience with Jehovah's Witness, like, teachings. Just, you know, the things that most people know, like they don't celebrate holidays, like things like that.
Yeah, like that, like
like I would definitely say comparable as far as like the rigidity. You know, it's very, very formal, and there's a lot of tradition and expectation that goes into how people behave in the religion. But I don't know a lot of the details, but I will say, so that it's not just like bashing our, I will say, like, from a higher perspective, I can empathize with everybody that has ever sought religion or even been raised into it and believed it, because I believe that that's part of like the hero's journey that we're here to all have as humans in our own unique ways, is to transcend victim consciousness that perpetuates the idea that anything we need is outside of ourselves. And before we wake up to that, before we start to get keen on finding all the different ways and subtle ways that we exchange power with the world in order to get something, before we wake up to that, something that promises salvation or being saved or some form of that is so appealing, to any part of victim consciousness, even pressed so deep down in the shadows, that has you feeling like you don't have all the answers or access to finding the answers, and some billboard on the fucking freeway says, call 1-800-Jesus, like, we will save you. Of course that looks appealing, So like, I have so much empathy for the people who have been in any sort of religious, like, I don't want to say brainwashing, that's biased, like, any sort of indoctrination, they've put themselves in that position because they're looking for something good. I think at the end of the day, everybody is always doing something for the most pure motivation to be loved, to be, connected the way that our souls all were before we came into this human form. And so I think it's a natural response to seek it out now that it's been created as an option in our cultures.
Yeah, and to be fair, the people that are actively involved in their church and inviting other people, it's not like they're inviting them to a cult. It's not like they're trying to brainwash them. They believe that there's salvation there. So why wouldn't I want my best friend to be saved too? Why wouldn't I want my best friend to feel this connection with Jesus or whoever it may be? So that's also comes from a good place,
Yeah. I think, if any, very, very, very few, like a super low percentage of people who identify as religious are consciously aware of the harms that can come from it. I think if you're in that boat, it's because you think it's a good boat. And I think that there's something like admirable and altruistic about that, even if the more awake and aware reality is contradictory.
Yeah. Like, I mean, from my perspective, obviously you can't put all Mexicans in one religion, but for the most part, the majority, I think, are Catholics. And that's because I think the Catholic religion, as far as what it is now in present day, that's the one that they can tolerate the most, because it's very minimal. It's very minimal. You go to church, once a week, if anything. And then you can still drink, you can still enjoy your party, and you can still do all these things for the most part. And then if you do slip up, you just have a confession and you start over. So that's the one that I feel Mexicans can tolerate. And you don't really have to like study your material. You really don't. And that's the difference I saw when going to a Christian church for the same reason, being 17 this time, going for another girl to a Christian church. That's the first thing I saw when you went to the Christian. I was like, I respected it because they actually knew their shit. They knew the Bible, they knew verses, and like they knew it. And to me, it was very like art of warish, like, know your stuff, know what you're gonna do. And from the Catholic Church, I went back to the Catholic Church looking like, man, we're kind of lazy, like we don't do that. We just show up, yawn, and still probably hungover, half asleep, and someone goes up and reads the scripture for today, and we get up, we get down, we do the calisthenics, and we're out. We do this and we're out of there and we're saved, and we go to enjoy our Sunday meal or drink or whatever. And that's something that I feel like, I mean, look at the way that religion arrived in Latin America, right? It was forced on them, through colonization. So obviously, it was something where it was like, okay, it was a middle ground. Okay, we'll do the minimum, and okay, all right, we'll do the gestures, and that's kind of how I see it now. But when I was younger, I was actively anti-Catholic, actively this and that. Like you said, I was actively, F y'all. But that's something that I feel like with time I've kind of mellowed out, and because no one has all the answers, so who am I to go and mock people for trying to find a way that speaks to them? So like that's why when you said earlier you're gonna get weird, by all means get weird. To me, there's no weird, there's no right or wrong really. So like that's something that by all means.